What's up, Avidity Man? Back. Welcome to a brand new video, and today it is time we are gonna dive deep into Godzilla The Ride Great Clash and discover what it tells us about the Godzilla -1 sequel, including a comment from director Takashi Yamazaki on the sequel to Godzilla -1 and Godzilla's opponent in that movie. Let's discuss. Alrighty gang, starting out with some artwork like always. This first piece comes to us from Mechagodzilla 3, and this is their Godzilla 1954 Hibiya train attack artwork with Godzilla smashing through the Hibiya train tracks. This is the same one he attacks in Godzilla -1, by the way, and you can go check it out in person with me in the first episode of Godzilla Ground Zero, where I take you to Tokyo and some of the most iconic Godzilla filming locations in real life. You can also see the Nichigeki Theater there on the side in this artwork. I thought this one was great, and because it's 54, I figured it goes in the -1 video. Next up, I really like this. Kaizilla did their own Hedorah -1 artwork. Now, it seems that Hedorah is the most likely opponent for Godzilla to fight in the -1 sequel, and this artwork I think is so cool. I really love it. I love the idea of Hedorah being the result of Godzilla. Because the way Godzilla -1 leaves off with shards of the creature being scattered throughout Ginza after his atomic breath and radioactive pieces of him being discovered, especially playing into the regeneration factor of Godzilla, it's very likely that another monster will grow from Godzilla himself, and what I would love to see is that monster wind up going down a different evolutionary path. If a piece of Godzilla's flesh were to attach itself to some trash or something disgusting, it could mutate into a Hedorah, and that's what this artwork depicts. Hedorah with Godzilla's spines is such a cool idea, and I like that the body itself has a bit more of a Godzilla-styled shape to it, but some fans weren't sure how they felt about his Hedorah -1, and so he took another stab at it, releasing this one with the horseshoe crab-inspired design. Hedorah does have multiple evolutions throughout the original Godzilla vs. Hedorah, so it's very likely that if he were to return, he could have multiple forms as well. So why not both? I love this one as well. It's very alien. It kind of gives Orga vibes, but you can definitely still feel Hedorah in there. I think it's very cool. And the horseshoe crab kind of makes sense because it's like a sort of perfectly designed creature according to evolution. So I think that's a very cool one. This one's not -1 related, but I wanted to show it off. It's so cool. This is Flicker Blue 1999. We've actually shown off some of their artwork on the channel before. This is their Godzilla 1954/62 hybrid. If Godzilla's design were to continue down a path like it did in the original Showa series, I would love for us to get a design like this in the sequel. Godzilla's design in -1 is sort of 54 inspired. It's actually mostly Heisei inspired, but I really love this one. And I would love to see some like Showa influences work their way into the -1 design. I'm not saying that this is exactly what I would want in a -1 sequel, because it kind of loses a bit of that -1 aesthetic, but I do think that this is a perfect blend between 54 and 62, and I actually think it's a very cool rework of the 62 Godzilla. If I were to design a Godzilla, I could see it looking something a lot like this as well, because of how much I love that 62 design. So I really love this artwork. I really wanted to show it off. I don't know who Galloping Ghost Kaiju Kobo is, especially because they have Kobo in the name, but I don't think they're associated with Kokoryu Kobo, who produces those insanely high-quality garage kits, although so does this guy. Galloping Ghost Kaiju Kobo revealed their largest Godzilla garage kit to date at the time they posted this, which was a 3.6-foot tall Godzilla garage kit. You can see it standing against a much more standard-sized one down there. I don't know how big that one down there is, maybe 6 or 12 inches, I'm not sure, but this Godzilla coming in at almost 4 feet nearly doubles the size of the old school Jack-specific Godzilla 2014, which was like the biggest Godzilla we could fathom back then. This is insane, and the level of detail is incredible on it, and they decided that they weren't done. They teased that they are working on a gargantuan Godzilla -1 garage kit. You can see the foot here, and the foot is up to the knee on that original Godzilla, and they didn't stop there. There's a picture showing off, I don't know who this man is, maybe the sculptor himself, standing next to the Godzilla. It's being made. It's still in progress. How tall is this? Maybe 9 feet? Because the real Godzilla -1 statue comes in at around 6 feet, and it is not this tall. It does not have this size gap on people. Unless this guy's just short, which I don't think he is. This might be the largest Godzilla -1 sculpt ever made in the real world. It is insanely cool. I don't know who you could possibly sell that to, or how much it would go for, but wow, is it sick. I can see this being commissioned for conventions, or maybe a step further, being commissioned by Toho for their use, but it's so freaking cool. Or unless this is just like a project that they undertook themselves, I have no idea. The level of detail on this thing is amazing. I'm astounded by it, and I cannot stop looking at it. With the release of Godzilla The Ride Great Clash, people like Tak, Sakuri Godzilla, and Mijor Heat posted pictures of the new Godzilla The Ride Great Clash billboard. The new billboard shows off the poster for Godzilla The Ride Great Clash, and it features Godzilla's head roaring at Mechagodzilla. There's one where they're kind of smushed next to each other. There's all these explosions going off. You can actually see this right next to the Ultraman billboard for Ultraman The Ride. Interestingly, I've seen direct translations of the title for the ride in Japan being more like Godzilla The Ride Great Crash, but the rest of this text on the poster says, "The strongest enemy appears. A battle that splits the seas and heavens. You will be the one to witness this unprecedented battle." And it's definitely giving Showa era vibes. In fact, you can see here it is on a double feature billboard, so freaking cool, with Godzilla The Ride Giant Monsters Ultimate Battle, which has a very, very Showa inspired poster with King Ghidorah and Godzilla on it. Super cool. I really love that billboard. And the double feature is so cool. I love that you can do a double feature and that one didn't replace the other. I'm so glad that Great Clash didn't replace the original Godzilla The Ride, but it simply opened alongside of it. Here's a better look at that billboard, just showing off that wonderful Showa style. I think it's so cool. The colors are great. I think it's so much fun. And that actress on the poster there is Riko Fukumoto, who actually appeared at the Godzilla press event for the opening of Great Clash, which I covered in the last video. Finally, here's a close-up look at that single poster. Very sweet. And you can really see the detail on the cannon inside of Mechagodzilla's mouth, which I'm so freaking good at my job, you guys. In a previous video, I said I thought Mechagodzilla had a cannon in his mouth, that there was like a big gun sticking in his mouth that was going to be the thing that released his new proton beam to fight Godzilla, and sure enough, that's exactly what it is. It's like a giant rail gun inside of Mechagodzilla's mouth that shoots his beam. As I said in the last video, on August 1st, Godzilla The Ride Great Clash opened in Japan, so it is open now. You can go to it now at the Seibun Amusement Park, and Iruma Cable TV covered the opening of the ride with this wonderful featurette, which I'll break down for you guys, linked down below. Go check it out. It's a great video going in depth on the ride. I highly recommend watching it. But for now, I'll run through the details in it, including Takashi Yamazaki getting a little bit of details, giving us the slightest bit of information about the Godzilla -1 sequel, which I find to be very surprising. First of all, they explained that the Seibun Amusement Park is celebrating its 75th anniversary this year with the new Godzilla The Ride, and it's also celebrating 100 years of the Showa era, which is funny because this ride, unlike Ultraman The Ride and the original Godzilla The Ride, doesn't seem to be set in the Showa period at all. They reveal some footage of the live-action show and pre-room with the new Mechagodzilla hangar, although they don't show the Mechagodzilla hangar. You can kind of glimpse it on the sides there, which is still pretty cool. Still gives us a bit of a look at what it's like on the inside of that pre-show room. They explained that fans are celebrating the new updated ride and how it was brought to us from the team who brought us Godzilla -1, celebrating the success of the original ride as well, saying that the original ride is very popular and this new one is a great addition to it. We then get to watch the press event with Takashi Yamazaki and Fukumoto, and it's pretty interesting here. Yamazaki calls this the third ride in the series. I don't think it means it's technically in canon or continuity with Godzilla The Ride Giant Monsters or Ultraman The Ride, but it's simply the third ride he's directed us. He directed all three of these. He talks about how hard it was to top the previous two rides and how hard it was to do something original that he hadn't done there already, which I wonder if that means he's almost going to be like running out of ideas on how to keep the -1 sequel fresh with the kaiju fight as well, because now he's directed Ghidorah versus Rodan, Ultraman versus all sorts of kaiju, Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, Godzilla versus King Ghidorah. But I think simply the way to do that is just to give Godzilla a different opponent, which is something he discusses here. He says that one way he tried to keep this one more interesting and different than the others was by adding a lot more emphasis to the ocean, because it's a very thrilling location since you have nowhere to run. You're very trapped and claustrophobic out there. The scenes in the ocean in this ride were inspired, of course, by Godzilla -1 and those wonderful ocean sequences in that movie. Yamazaki wanted to up the stakes from the ocean action sequences in Godzilla -1 for this new ride, which definitely makes sense now that Godzilla's fighting another monster. Yamazaki explains that he wanted a chance to get his take on Mechagodzilla, but he thought it would be hard to include Mechagodzilla in the Godzilla movie, which is why he was selected for this ride. It was Takashi Yamazaki's idea, and Toho was very excited about it. That's kind of a big revelation. It doesn't change anything because we already kind of assumed Mechagodzilla wouldn't appear in the Godzilla -1 sequel. As I discussed in other videos, I thought Mechagodzilla's inclusion in this ride was directly confirming that Mechagodzilla wouldn't appear in the new -1 movie, as well as the time period of the film itself not really making sense for Mechagodzilla Mechagodzilla, but with Takashi Yamazaki being such a big fan of Mechagodzilla Absolute Zero, the fan film which had its own steampunk 1940s Mechagodzilla, there was a door opened for Mechagodzilla to appear in the -1 sequel. Well, that seems to be off the table now. Takashi Yamazaki is saying he wanted to use Mechagodzilla but couldn't think of a way to include him in that sequel because Mechagodzilla simply does not fit the world of -1 or the aesthetic of that movie, which I guess is kind of an assumption that it's going to be a direct sequel, but again, every bit of evidence states that it's going to be a direct sequel to Godzilla -1, and we do now have confirmation it will be another period piece. The important thing here is that Takashi Yamazaki will not be using Mechagodzilla in the sequel, which officially finally rules Mechagodzilla out for the new Godzilla movie. There were some people I saw online that still believed that Mechagodzilla might appear in the next Godzilla film, but it's officially confirmed here. Mechagodzilla won't be in that movie, but will be in the ride, and it was Takashi Yamazaki's idea to get to use Mechagodzilla, and he wanted to put him in the ride. For the same reason, I think it's unlikely, but not impossible, certainly not out of the question, that King Ghidorah and Rodan will appear in the next Godzilla movie from Takashi Yamazaki as well, just given that he's already used them in the ride as well. Yamazaki explains that the ocean was the most difficult part of this ride, more so than Godzilla -1, because here the waves were so much closer to you, and they get on you, unlike in the film, meaning he had to be a lot more deliberate with the waves here. He also confirms that this ride will be a continuous shot, just like the original Godzilla The Ride, all one unbroken action sequence with no cuts, which makes it a lot harder than a movie, where you can actually cut around certain things. He says in a movie, if there's an explosion, you can cut to the aftermath, whereas here you have to watch the full process of the explosion go on. He also explains that the buildings were really hard as well, because they spent so much time so close up to the buildings that they had to render them in more and more detail over and over again until they look as good as they do in the ride. This is something I find really interesting. I'm very curious to see how things go from here. Is the Godzilla -1 sequel gonna have enough time to cook? Obviously, Godzilla The Ride, the first one, was being worked on right before Godzilla -1, but there was a bit longer of a delay, 2019 until 2023. Godzilla The Ride Giant Monsters was started to be worked on, I believe, in 2019, came out around 2021, and then from 2021 to 2023, they were working on Godzilla -1, whereas here, Takashi Yamazaki has been working on pre-production for Godzilla -1 sequel this whole time ever since 2023, really ever since the start of 2024, but he's also been busy on this ride, and here he admits they should have been preparing for the next movie, but the ride was coming up first, so it wound up taking priority. Yamazaki says he actually dismissed his staff from working on the ride, feeling they had done good enough, and told them that they could begin working on the movie, but they actually kept working on the ride out of passion, because they wanted to make it as good as they possibly could. Yamazaki says they were actually working on the ocean wave sequences right up until the very last minute, which the ocean waves were primarily handled by Tatsuji Nojima, who did the ocean wave simulations for Godzilla -1 as well. That's another interesting detail, as it seems with Godzilla -1, the first movie, they shot the film and then started VFX after the fact, which is not the way it works in Hollywood. Typically in Hollywood, VFX are started first before filming begins, at least certainly the previs, and then the VFX have a lot longer to be worked on, but it's also why you see a lot of Hollywood pictures undergoing many VFX revisions, as filming changes the course of the movie. Sometimes a director does something on set like, I don't know, save Noriko's life or add that mark on her neck last minute in the movie, and that's something the VFX crew wouldn't be aware of if they had started VFX too soon. You know, little things like that change the story. There are moments on set that change the course of the script, especially when you're the director and writer of the script. So I do think it's interesting that it seems like they're taking a bit more of the Hollywood approach this time, where it sounds like the VFX process has already started on the Godzilla -1 sequel. Now, how far in are they? Probably not very at all. If anything, they're probably doing those early animatics and previs, maybe modeling the characters, sculpting the kaiju, but I don't think they're going to be like far in the VFX process, as Yamazaki is still going to be the VFX supervisor this time around, which means he's going to need to be there in person in order to supervise. So VFX really are going to probably be a slow process until he's freed up from production on Godzilla -1 sequel, which means they're likely to really jump into the VFX starting early next year. We actually see the pre-room show has a walkthrough with various rooms being displayed. Very cool. Lots of those hangar rooms. We do know that there's one showing off the goose nest, and then there's one showing off Mechagodzilla, but we don't get to see them here. Yamazaki reveals he actually hadn't seen the final finished pre-show room until this opening and was very impressed with it. Fukumoto describes it as being so intense and celebrates the excitement of being so close to a battle with Godzilla and Mechagodzilla. She celebrates the splashing water and how the ocean plays a part into the feel of the ride. Yamazaki says he finds it to be a truly scary ride and loves it for that. He really loves the falling experiences during the ride as the seats are on drop out from under you, which makes a lot of sense. I can say from watching Godzilla -1 in a 4D theater, maybe it's just because I was so sleepy the first time I watched it in 4D, but the seats drop when Noriko is in the train and Godzilla chomps it and she actually falls and catches that bar. The seat dropped with you and then like caught you, you know, and I literally jumped and had to grab onto the seat because it was so immersive for me and I literally felt like I was falling. It was very wild, and then I can only guess that is amplified tenfold in the actual ride. They then unveil a mock-up of the new Mechagodzilla, which I'll talk more about in the next video. Yamazaki says it was quite difficult to make this mock-up, but he was very passionate about the fact that they needed a physical model of it, and so he had this created. We then get some guest reactions to the ride, with guests describing it as an improvement over the last ride and celebrating all of the new effects and features of this ride. One guest celebrates that her dream is to get killed by Godzilla and she finally gets to live that out through this ride. A child talks about how scary the ride was, while other guests celebrate how the ride showcases Yamazaki's unique directing style. Finally, a practical ship model is revealed that they base their Goose ship on. And that brings this news report to an end. And while there is still more to cover for Godzilla The Ride Great Clash, including a breakdown of the teaser and what it means for Godzilla's design and powers heading into the next movie, I'll save that for another video. I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. It is through the support of the patrons on Patreon that I'm able to continue to make videos like this for you. If you want to support the Patreon, you can use the link in the description below where you can get early access to content, access to the Discord community, and more. If that's not your thing, please consider joining as a channel member. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you all next time for the next one. D-Man out.